tools now, and I'm going to use my tools to show depth in here. So what I want you guys to do now is we're going to take all of your practice and your smooth gradient shading with, I don't want you to do stippling today, it takes too long. Stippling, cross-hatching, scribbling, your own creation, all these things are possibilities. But I want you to apply them to these objects now so that you can show depth. In order to do that, we got to pick a light source. Remember with the still life drawings? So my light source, here's my little sun. Oh, it's a sunny day. It's going to go right over here. So the light is going to come from this direction as I'm working on this, and I'm going to show that light coming from over here is going to give me the depth in these objects with how I shade them. Now this is farther away, so I don't want to have too much over there, right? So maybe I'll have this, I don't like that line in there, but I drew that on later. So maybe I have some lines kind of like this, something like that. And I need to think about cast shadows too. Now this cast shadow is going to be overlapped, so I don't have to worry about that too much. Maybe when I get over here, I want to practice my cross hatching, and I don't want to just put X's, right? Because I want to show this form, this depth. So when I do cross hatching on something like a cone, I want to have a gradual change, remember, because it's a gradual change in value. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of careful time today because I want to, this is practice. This is my practice page. When I get to my final imaginary landscape, I'm going to really want to think about the difference between how I shade and the lines and things that I use so that I can differentiate between objects, and that the texture I use on my objects should relate to my objects. But notice I'm trying not to shade in rows. I'm trying to kind of move my shading around, and because I'm using ink now, I need to change by my value by how many marks I'm making, how close together they are, and not necessarily by my pressure like we did when we had pencils and the soft pastels and things like that. But I want a lot of marks away from my light source, and I'm going to be cross-hatching, but it doesn't have to be necessarily a perfect X. It actually works better to show the form of that object by making sort of differently diagonal lines. So as I'm doing this, I'm using less and less as I come around, but I want it to be a gradual change in value because a cone doesn't have edges. It's not a prism, right? It's a cone. So I need to get more here and really darken these, and it helps me to do some kind of vertical ones because I can cross hatch with that and then bring this over. Now I would probably keep going with this so I could lighten it gradually as I come around, but I want to get some different samples in here for you. When I get to this, maybe now I want to show this is like kind of a fuzzy cylinder. I don't know what cylinders would be fuzzy, I don't know, but maybe I'm going to try, maybe this is my scribbling texture, some sort of scruffling-ish light texture as I come in here. So less marks as I come around here, more marks here, but wait a minute, I overlapped the cone and the cylinder, right? So those of you who started shading, glad you're gung-ho. Pause and look up here for a minute. But as I see here, this is overlapping, and my light source is over here, so there's going to be a cast shadow. So over here, there's going to be some darker value that I'm going to put in here. Now, oh my goodness, look, the values are the same. So as I'm doing this, it's really important that and this is a little hard to see, so this is a good lesson. When I get to my final drawing, I need to do something to show the difference from this object to this object. Because now I can't just change the pressure of my pencil. I might have to darken this one a little more. And there aren't outlines in life, right? We're not going to draw comics, we're going to draw landscapes. And you can do mystical landscapes and imaginary ones if that's what you like, because I want this to be fun and imaginative for you. But at the same time, I need to make sure I see the difference between this object and this object. So it's important that I have a different enough mark and a different enough value change. So I darken this one a little bit, and then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to continue to change my value slowly. And it's a good idea, if I can't tell if I've lightened it enough, kind of squint or hold it out further away from you, and then you'll be able to see the value changes a little more. And I would keep going down here. I just want to give you the idea. Now I come over here. I got to do something different than a scribble or a real messy line like this. So pause and look up if you're shading. I'm going to go over here, and maybe now I'm going to do like these kind of vertical lines. But cubes have an edge, right? I don't want a smooth value. So maybe over here, I'm doing a hatching line where there's less of them because I really want to make sure my values are differentiated between the two sides of the object. So maybe over here I use hatching and I just have one directional lines, And then over here, they're much closer together and there's much more of them. So I can keep going and keep adding enough so that I almost don't even see that edge, that my lines and my value change describe that edge for me. And then finally, as I get over to my sphere, as I do the sphere, similarly again, I want to make sure I'm describing that motion. So maybe now it's almost like cross-hatching. Maybe now I start to do like a curved line. And this is one option. You can do other options too, but I want to remember that with the sphere, often there's this sort of highlight on the edge, and I'm going to do kind of my light values first. I guess not kind of. I'm going to do my light values first. And then I'm going to come back in, and I'm going to darken those more as I get close to the other side. But I'm using a mark, and you can choose any mark you'd like, but having those marks follow the form are going to give it even more depth and even more value as I'm working and putting these things in here. Now the last thing I need to think about when I'm shading and adding value and showing depth is I need to make sure that I have cast shadows, otherwise these will appear to float in the sky. Now anytime you have a cast shadow on a flat surface, and we have it in these still lives, it's going to be something you might have some of, but not as much of when you get to your landscapes. This should sit flat. If they sit flat, they will appear to sit flat on the table. So I'm going to use a horizontal mark, and I want this to be sort of a circle, so it looks like it's a cast shadow of a circle, of a sphere, I should say. And then this is going to come out here, far away from there. It gets stopped. So the fact that this directional line is different than that direction helps me. And remember, shadows do not have outlines. They tend to be a little darker at the edge where they start. And then they'll come away. And then here, this is going to be, it'll be more of like a rectangular shape as I go. And then this one will become a cone. I'm just doing little shadows right now because I want to concentrate more of my time on this. So I'm going to give you 16 minutes, maybe 17 if you put in a little guy, to about 4 minutes an object to work on creating and filling in all these different objects. So by the time you're done, you have smooth gradations and sharp differentiations and cast shadows. Okay? Thank you all.